Hello, this is the Doctor Who spin-off show, The Listmakers. I'm Dave.
And I'm Rob.
And to finish off 2024's set of Listmakers, before we all go into the Christmas season, episode 45, we are talking about, and I think this is going to be a fun topic, Rob, top 5 female baddies.
Yes, we are. I can hear the sleigh bells, Dave, and we're going to have a great list tonight.
We are. I don't know if we're going to snap this time.
We have potential. Oh, I'm going to say 2.
I'm going to say maybe 1.
Okay.
But it's your turn to go first, Rob, so please make your list.
All right, Dave. In at number 5, I've got the Weeping Angels. And I always try and look for something odd in my lists, and I think it's fair to say that the Weeping Angels are female presenting, at least. They have female faces, they wear female clothing, and while I think they can look like any sort of statue, and I mean, big shout out to that god-awful Statue of Liberty moment.
Yeah, okay.
And look, sometimes they do present as little male cherubs too. I get that. But the stone cold, no pun intended, classic look of the Weeping Angels is female. So I'm running with it, Dave. And sure, there's an argument to be made that they've been a baddie of diminishing returns every time they've come back to the show. But I think their input has been massive overall. They're probably the best known baddies to emerge from New Who. And that's nothing to sniff at, but I'll tuck them in at number 5 here because I know I'm being a bit naughty.
Fair enough.
Don't tell Santa. All right. In at number 4, I've got Captain Rack. And granted, this might not be a top 5 pick for everyone, but what I'm attracted to here is the fun the character represents. Not only is Linda Barron having fun, but the character herself is having fun. You think of being an Eternal and just doing stuff over and over, forever and ever and ever, and you think, oh my God, you'd go nuts. You know, you'd want to cut loose and pretend to be a pirate and be outrageous and sabotage your pals and kill them and have fun, wouldn't you? I think so. So Enlightenment is one of those Davo stories that, again, no pun intended, more enlightened 80s Doctor Who fans enjoy, and part of that, maybe even a big part of that, I think, is Barron's performance. So, again, maybe not in everyone's top 5, completely acknowledge that, but I think putting her here is still defensible versus all the other classic era villainesses at the very least.
Excellent. And you totally did intend that pun, Rob, don't pretend.
Yeah, I've got written here, pun, in capitals. Yes. In at number 3, I've got Helen A. Now, some listeners might not realise, but Andrew Cartmel actually penned a comic strip a few years back for SFX magazine called The Death of Fifi, where he gave the Helen A backstory, starting with when she's a little girl living with her mum and dad, and it ends just post Happiness Patrol, where, spoilers everybody, she's still cradling Fifi in her arms and she's executed. So, even without that kind of extra backstory though, decades after the event, I think Helen A is still a really interesting character anyway, in a really interesting story, just given with what we've got on screen. I think most notably, she's a product of her environment. She didn't invent the system that she's in, she just thrived in it. And I think that's often more believable than someone just being born bad, in quotation marks, and they create a bad environment. This environment already existed, and Helen just became a real winner at navigating it. And I think that's really interesting. So she's in at number 3. In at number 2, I've got Morgaine. And although Battlefield is flawed in so many, many ways, and even stuff that should look really cool, like, hey, look, knights, explosions, unit, all of that looks really cheesy. But Morgaine shines through as this really interesting character. First, there's that background with the Doctor. And to some degree, yes, that's a cheat. It's very easy to do the whole, ooh, this character has a deep backstory. Ooh, this character, knows the Doctor. Ooh, we won't tell you about it, though. But there's also these character moments written in where she'll kill a bloke, but then she'll give a woman back her eyesight. And you're left with this very conflicted feeling of she's doing horrible stuff, but she's also doing some really very nice stuff too. And it all comes down to her own morality, her own code. That makes her three-dimensional compared to so many villains and villainesses that we've had over time.
Nice.
And in at number 1, I've got Missy. And it feels like a bit of a cheat to end here, as the vast majority of Missy's backstory actually happens as a man, but as a woman, almost as a new character when she first appears. Missy does have an arc that I think gets her to number one on this list anyway, through many stories. And at first, I wasn't down with her, and it went just beyond a basic, why are we doing this when, if we wanted a top female counterpart to the Doctor, we could just use the Rani, so why are we doing this? And I simply didn't get the whole over-the-top Mary Poppins on acid kind of portrayal. But even that's because I long to have a down-to-earth master again, so just park that. I think the character really started to work by the season 10 stories she's in. I think she felt layered and interesting and tragic, and through the multiple appearances, and she kept popping up, I think she ends up head and shoulders above the pack. And that's my list.
That's a very strong list of some great villainesses.
Thank you.
And we have one snap, and it's the one I thought.
Yeah, okay.
My list.
Yes.
I'm going all the way back to the Hartnell era, and at number 5, I'm going with Marga from the Dravans, whose mission was to conquer space.
Wow.
And I picked Marga because she's a great 1960s villainess, and we don't get a lot of female villains in the Hartnell and Troughton era. We get some, but it's not an era known for that. But she's a very good character. She's very well written, and there's also a real nastiness in the character. There's a proper... she's there to be bigoted. The whole point of the Galaxy 4 as a story is about bigotry and prejudice, and Marga is the embodiment of those traits, to the point she would rather die with the planet and have her troops die with the planet than treat the Rills well and become friends with the Rills. And I think that's conceptually a really interesting case, performed really well. So I put Marga on my list.
Okay.
Number 4, I think, Rob...
Yes.
This is a first for the list makers, because I have something from the Gatwa era.
Oh, I think it is. Yes.
I think this is our first Gatwa era reference on the list makers, because at number 4, I have got Dot and Bubbles Lindy.
Oh, wow.
And as I was going through the list of stories and doing my short list and looking at options, I thought, you know what? I could still speak at length about Dot and Bubble the episode, and does it work, and do I enjoy it? And I'm still very conflicted. And one thing I do need to do over this summer, once we get to the Christmas break, I think, is rewatch some of those Gatwa episodes, including Dot and Bubble, and just see where it lands for me. The better part of a year on. But forgetting about all of that, the character of Lindy was a really strong and effective character who, again, is well performed. Again, she is the epitome and the embodiment of bigotry and prejudice, which makes her more than just a ha, I'm conquering the world. There's something to her. And the moment where she told the Sphere that the guy's name was actually something else, so it would take him out, not her, is a moment that genuinely had me go, wow, what a horrible person. And that, I think, is a real standout moment. So I thought, let's give her a go on this list.
Okay.
Number 3, Morgaine.
Aha, there we are.
I thought this could be a snap. If anything was going to be a snap, it would be. And for all the reasons you said, Jean Marsh's performance is wonderful. There are the moments that you talk about that were really, really good. The murder of Flight Lieutenant Lavelle is just a horrible moment, but counterpointed, as you say, by her other actions. There's the sense of honour about what she does, and at the same time, for all of her, I will not kill you this time, but next time, and all that sort of thing she talks about, but she's happy to loose the destroyer on the world just because the Doctor pissed her off a bit. She's happy to launch or detonate a nuclear weapon just to make a point. So for all her talk about honour and the rest of it, she's actually pretty ruthless and wicked, and so well portrayed. I just think it's a great performance. Morgaine had to be on the list.
Yes.
Number 2, I'm going to the Tom Baker era, at the very start, in fact, and Hilda Winters. Again, a great performance in an era of the show that is not known not just for its lack of female villains, but for its lack of females, full stop. Hilda Winters is an absolute standout. It's a good performance, and again, she's ruthless, but again, it's about something. It's about her fundamental fascist idea that she knows what's best for everybody. Yeah. She knows what's best for the country, and she's going to put her ideas into practice. And if that means that literally millions are going to die in a nuclear holocaust, she's willing to do it. And I think that's a really strong thing. I think the way that she interacts with the other characters is good. I like the way that the Brigadier, when confronted with her, isn't quite sure what to do. Yeah. It's like, hang on, it's a woman, I can't man. Oh, what do I do now? I do like the way they sort of, at no point does the story do the whole, oh wow, she's a bad woman, but it does just show in the Brigadier's interaction like, oh, it's a bad woman, I don't know what to do. I think it's just there, and I think it's a really good performance.
Cool.
Number one, I'm sticking with the Tom Baker era, but going to the other end, and that is Cessair of Diplos, also known as Vivian Faye. Just for the performance, just for the long-term villainy, just for the fact that she's got a couple of Ogre as her henchmen, and what sort of villain or villainess shouldn't have a couple of Ogre as their henchmen? A bit of a gang to hang around with. I love the way that she's so undercover, but just a little bit sinister, and you just get a sense of something's not quite right here. I love the full body silver makeup. I love the way she manipulates the Doctor. I love the wickedness of her. But more than anything, she's just great fun. Yeah. She's just great fun, and I think it's an awesome performance. So, Cessair of Diplos is my number one.
Very good. Did you have any runners-up?
I had two runners-up. The first I had was Jan Lee from The Power of the Daleks.
Okay.
Another case of a woman who is ruthless and wants to take over society just because she thinks she knows best.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get Jan Lee in, and I couldn't. The other one was one that I suspect our listeners are going, she didn't make any of your lists.
I know
that's
it's
the
Rani.
Be.
Yep.
And let me say, Rob, I'll get your take in a moment. Had the Rani only appeared in Mark of the Rani, whilst I'm not a big fan of that story, I think she's pretty good in that. I think the Pip and Jane conceptualisation of the Rani as being amoral rather than immoral is seen there. I think the way that she plays with and shows up the Master is really good. I like that performance. However, in Time of the Rani, and Rob, I'm not just at risk of losing my Doctor Who fan card for not including the Rani, but I think I'm going to lose my gay card for what I'm about to say. I actually don't like her ultra camp performance in Time of the Rani. I actually don't think that is the Rani as conceived by Pip and Jane Baker.
Right.
I think it's just Kate O'Mara going back to the Doctor Who and having a great deal of fun being Kate O'Mara.
Yeah.
And I think that's not great. So that's why I didn't put the Rani up there. Inconsistency.
Yeah, look, on my runners-up list, I had the Rani, and I jotted down such an interesting idea for a character. And a character I would love to see back on TV. But the two TV outings aren't great. And one of them is sheer bloody awfulness. So I can't sit here and say with a straight face that she's top 5 material. Full stop. And the other thing I jotted down was any time a female companion gets cloned. So, like the Sontarans having a Martha clone. Or the Zygons having a Clara clone. I think it's always fun to see people who look and speak like our heroes but are doing bad things. I think that's really cool. But none of them could credibly make the top 5. But I do like it.
Yeah, even Sarah under hypnosis, for example, very creepy, very sinister.
There you go.
I think Liz Slater would have made a fantastic villain had she not been the companion. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I really liked your pick of Helen A, Rob, and again, not so much because I think that Helen A is a particular fantastic villain. I think she's a good villain, but not stellar. But because of what you added to it, I hadn't heard of that comic, and that idea of her being someone who just thrived in an environment, I think is really, really interesting. I sort of got Andor vibes from that. The idea of people who are just like, well, this is the system of government I work in, so I guess I just want to get to the top of this system. I think is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And a few of these, I think picks where, to use the Morgaine example, she'll kill someone, then give someone their eyesight. That 3-dimensional sort of nature comes through. Or Captain Rack just doing things for fun, You can believe in that. Because sometimes you watch, not just Doctor Who, anything, even a Bond movie, and someone wants to take over the world, in quotation marks. You think, well, why? Because you're going to be stopped. This can't go on forever. Oh, I guess then again we have dictators who do all that sort of stuff, and they must know that it can't last, but they still do it. But do you know what I mean? Like, some of my picks here, it was because of the more three-dimensional. I can actually believe in why this person is doing it. And almost your example from Robot, you can almost believe why she's doing it.
Yeah, that genuine sense of megalomania that I know best. And not only do I know best, I'm so confident in that I'm going to impose it on other people.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating concept. I mean, I've always said, it takes a huge amount of ego to say that, you're the person who should be the Prime Minister or the President. I'm the best person for this job. It takes a lot of ego. To take it beyond that to, I'm going to impose myself on you all unwillingly is just incredible. But yes, I certainly tried to lean into characters that weren't just, I'm bad because I'm bad. but they had a philosophy that was fundamentally oppressive and wicked and nasty. And that's where Marga comes from. That's where Lindy comes from. That's where Hilda Winters comes from. And I think that's really, really... To me, that's what makes a good villain. And I think that's also why a number of these female villainesses are so good compared to a lot of the men who actually, when it comes down to it, just are, I want to take over the universe. Why? I just do. And I think that, there's a lot of thought gone into these characters. And Helen A, again, not on my list, but there's some thought. I mean, she has a philosophy. It's a bonkers philosophy, but she has a philosophy that at its fundamental level isn't wrong. I mean, the idea that she wants everyone to be happy is not in itself a wicked ambition. It's just a flawed, impossible one that she tries to impose by the mass murder of her population.
Yeah, that's it. And look, and Missy, I said she almost becomes a brand new character, even though there's all that master baggage. But just taking the arc from when she becomes Missy, I think it's really good. I think the layering and the tragic feel to her character is something we don't necessarily get with the Master. I think she does genuinely want to be good, although we spend many stories wondering, is this just a ruse? What's happening here? And in the end, she didn't quite stand with the Doctor, but she wasn't quite against him either. I find that interesting. Yeah, look,
I've said to you a couple of times on the podcast, Rob, had Missy just been in Series 10, I would have a huge respect for her, and she would absolutely have made my list. I'm not a fan of her earlier appearances, and again, it's the same as my problem with Kate O'Mara as the Rani. There is a consistency in my views across this. It's not just about Missy being a female master and having an issue with that. It's not. I don't like those sort of big camp over the top performances that Michelle Gomez does in her first few appearances and that Kate O'Mara does, particularly in her second appearance. That's not to my taste. That's fine. It is to others. That's fine. But yes, the later iteration of Missy, the slightly calmer and more, I think, three-dimensional Missy, I think is absolutely the right one. Had it been that, she would have been on the list. Had the Rani only been in Mark of the Rani, she would have been on the list, but they weren't. And that's fine, because I get to talk about great one-off characters like Lindy and Marga and Helen Winters.
Yeah,
Hilda Winters.
Yeah, even Mark of the Rani's not enough to get her on the list for me, Dave. But the idea of the character is so strong. Yes. I still want her to come back.
Yes, and I hope that if they ever do bring the Rani back into the new series, they do really go right down to first principles and get that proper amorality in there. Because I think that you're right. As good as the concept was, it never quite came off on screen.
Yeah, agree.
We are out of time, Rob.
We are.
Which means it is time to reach into Turlo's hat of Rassilon. And our topic to kick off 2025.
Oh my
God. Bloody hell.
Mm.
When did that happen? Our topic for the next episode of Listmakers is top 5 stories that best use time.
Oh, wow.
Now, Rob, I'm going to be very specific here because I know the way your brain works. It's time.
Is that good or bad?
It's time TIME. So no, I don't want you coming across and doing, oh well, the Seeds of Doom had some good time. TYM. Because I know the way your brain works, Rob. Time.
Right. Okay.
But oh my goodness, we're out of time.
Yes.
We'll save that all for next month. Until then, I've been Dave.
I've been Rob.
And we'll make some more lists next year.
We will. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.